Hello, hello. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're so happy to be here. I'm your host, Justine Mangum Kirkman. I'm the artist and owner of Winnie Weston. I am here with, oh my gosh, such a talented artist, lettering artist, Belinda Kou. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. Okay, so before we jump into what Belinda, what she creates and what she'll be working on today, I did want to say, definitely do not forget to join the Adobe Live community, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us at Adobe Live on Instagram for the latest streams, updates, and more. Hello to everybody in the chat, Penny, Joshua, Oliver, Gareth, we're so happy for you to be here. Okay, so now we got all of that out the way. Belinda, tell us more about you. Show us what you've done so far, the work you create, and tell us what you'll be working on today.
All right. So, hello, everyone. It's so great to be here. I hope that you're excited to do some lettering because I am a lettering artist and illustrator. I actually got into lettering years ago when I had kids. It was a creative outlet at first, and then I ended up leaving my agency job to pursue it full time as a business. So, it's been really great. And I can do a lot of fun types of work. It's actually just something that I really enjoy doing. Some of my favorite projects that I've done before include learning experiences for Apple and Espresso, greeting cards, illustrations like editorial illustrations and book covers for Target and all sorts of fun clients. You can see that a lot of my work is colorful and I like to keep it playful. And there's a lot of food involved because I just really love consuming it, both literally and visually. So yeah, that's what most of my work is about. And we're going to get really festive into holiday illustrations since it is December. So here is some of the more recent holiday designs that I've done, and we're going to be able to do one together in Fresco today.
Awesome. We're excited. Just dive on in. We can't wait.
All right. Okay, so we are going to be working in Adobe Fresco today. I'm just going to stay in this app the whole time so you can see what you can do just primarily on your iPad. That's like a big part of my business is I love that I can just do the majority of my illustrations on the iPad. And when I work with clients, I might end up wrapping it up in another Adobe program. But in terms of illustrations, it's mostly done on the iPad, which is also like a pretty nice perk when you've got small kids running around all the time. You can just kind of like draw while they're there and then put it away without worrying about them like knocking over your paints and stuff.
Right. And if they do, you can always backspace and,
Yes.
digital is so much better with that.
Yeah, that double tap is like an innate gesture for me now. Like I find
I
myself doing it in real life too with makeup and stuff.
Me too. I'm like, double tap. Can we go
Yeah,
back?
my eyeliner's a little off. Oh crap, I can't do that in real
Oh,
life.
that is me. That is me. Oh my God, all the time, all the time.
Yes, totally. All right, so we will start off with some holiday kind of lettering. I'm going to show you two different lettering styles that you can do in fresco. It's something that I like to use in my designs. And then followed with that, I'll show you how I apply those designs to a greeting card illustration. And I'll kind of take you behind the scenes on how to create that as well. So whenever I begin with illustrations of any kind, I always start just by writing. I find that it helps for me to brain dump those ideas out of my head onto something that I can see. So we're going to start with just a really basic, I like to call it a T chart.
Mm.
All right, so I'm just going to draw like a nice simple T here. And we're going to start with some holiday words on the left side and some illustrations with two L's. Illustrations that kind of come to mind when you think, I'm not spelling today. Illustrations. All right, there you go. I think I got it right.
Yep, you got it.
We'll spell check
Perfect.
before we finalize it
Right,
later.
right.
So, yeah. All right. So, this is something that you can kind of chime into if you're in the chat. And just if you could kind of like read it out loud to me. I
Of
actually realize I
course,
don't
of
have the chat pulled up.
course. Uh-huh.
But yeah, so when it comes to the holidays, what are some words that come to mind? We'll start with this side first.
Oh, that's a great question. Please, if you're in the chat, um, she asked what are some great holiday cards that come to mind when you think of course, the holidays? So write it in the chat. I know for
Yeah.
me, I definitely think of Mary. I think of bright. I don't know. I always see like Mary and bright. I
Marion
think
Bright.
of snow.
Yeah. That reminds me
Anyone
of
in the
like
chat, definitely let me know and I can read them out. Belinda.
Wonderland.
Oh yeah, Wonderland is good.
Joy, peace,
Joy, peace. Trying to think of tree.
tree.
That's kind of like a little generic, but we all know what I'm
Hey,
talking
it
about.
works. Yeah.
Penny in the chat said gingerbread. Oh, that's a good one, Penny.
Gingerbread. Yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Oh, yeah, I
like
like gingerbread a lot.
celebrate.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I guess we
Joy.
can jump over to the right side now too. So we've got a selection of words here, and it doesn't have to tie directly, but like when you think about the holidays, what are some imagery that come to mind? And I'm actually going to
Mm.
repeat some of the stuff that we had on the left side because they can also be pretty visual. So
And just to
snow.
let you know, Joshua in the chat said star, Catherine in the chat said peppermint, just so you Robert said Santa, just some ideas. So you separate the words that you're planning to draw out, or is this more of like just inspiration for you to kind of work off of?
Yeah, so it's kind of right now, what we're going to do next is we're going to take an individual word and we're going to letter it with some of these illustrations. So it's kind of a bit of both, I guess you could say.
Mm.
Primarily when I'm thinking about what I'm going to letter, for instance, if it's a phrase, I might break those words out just to see if some of them can be illustrated. Because if I can find a way to add more illustrations to my work, I will. And illustrating the word literally is one of the kind of tactics that I use to kind of infuse that illustration into the layout.
Oh,
So
nice.
I find that breaking it apart, like word and then visual, helps me to kind of do some fun remixes. I usually do it in my head actually at this point, but I do like to kind of
Write it
show it
out.
visually for you guys
Uh-huh.
so that you can see what's going on.
I love that. I love that. I always think like sometimes when I look through my iPad, I'll see, of course, illustrations and, sketches. And then it's so funny, I'll see all of these times when I wrote down notes. And someone will, like, my husband will look at my iPad and he'll be like, "What is this? Is that an illustration?" And I'm like, "No, those are my notes."
Yeah.
I'm like, I have to make notes first. Um,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, because like sometimes the illustration might not come forward in your head right away. So it's kind of nice to have like some guiding words to get you there. So
Right,
yeah, notes are
right.
great. All right. So I kind of have this list. Thank you guys for sharing some of those ideas in the chat. What we're going to do next is we're going to start combining the word with the illustration. And I'm just going to do 2 words today before we jump into the greeting card illustration. And then if we have some time after, we can do some more.
Oh, perfect.
So let's see. Okay. What I'm going to do is, because this is a nice, that's what I like about digital. I can just kind of like move it off to the
I
side and you can still see it.
know. I know.
It's so convenient.
I know. I love that's the thing about digital. Oh my gosh.
All
Hey,
right.
Alessandra. Thank you for joining.
I am going to start with the illustration first because I already kind of know which two to start illustrating so that you can see how it translates to the greeting card.
Mhm.
But again, if we have time after that part, we can look at a few more of these and try to illustrate those together as well. So one really fun style that you can do in fresco in particular is let's go with the peppermint, which is kind of like candy cane.
I like
We're
that.
gonna do like a candy cane kind of style to our word. And let me think. If we're looking at this list, which one do you think would be the best one to illustrate with like a
For the
candy cane style?
holiday word list.
Yes.
Huh. I kind of feel like gingerbread and tree remind me of it because I think of like peppermint candies being put on a gingerbread house or
Yeah.
being put on, hung up on a tree. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm thinking. I don't
Okay.
know. People in the chat, let us know.
Yeah. I'll give you another, I guess, spoiler is that our second style is going to be kind of related to gingerbread. So I might save gingerbread for that one.
Okay, yeah.
Depending on the time, I might pick a shorter word for that one, but just keep that in mind for our second one.
Okay,
Um,
perfect.
but yeah, so we've got like a peppermint style, and we're gonna letter this word with the actual like kind of candy cane effect. So, I mean, I guess if we're indecisive about it, we could just start with the very top one. I'll just go
Perfect.
with Mary.
Mary works for
Okay.
everything.
Yeah. All right. So, okay. When it comes to creating like this sort of peppermint aesthetic, you can start with just like sketching out how you want that word to sort of look like before you execute the style. Um, like after that. So I sketch out, I do the word thing first, and then I like roughly sketch out everything next. And these rough sketches are like for Belinda's brain only or for our brain only. Don't worry about like making it look super nice because it's not like a client facing part of the
Right.
process. It's more just like
Mm-hmm.
brainstorming.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
So yeah, I'm gonna just like, oh, and right now, in case you're wondering, I am using in the pixel brushes under sketching, it's the pencil brush. I love it. It actually really feels a lot like a pencil when I use it, and I don't think I even do anything to adjust in terms of the settings for the brush.
Right.
Um,
Now, is that one of your like go-to brushes when you first start out? You always use that pencil brush?
yep. Like if
Okay.
I'm in brainstorm mode, that's what I'm using. If I'm sketching, this is what I'm using. And then I start to add in more brushes once I start like executing the style.
Ooh, okay.
So Mary. And then we're gonna just like, this is basically like I'll do like a skeleton of the lettering and then just super roughly again. I'm not trying to make this look pretty right now. It's just kind of so that I can gauge what I'm doing next.
Mm-hmm. For your eyes only. Well,
For
for
my
our
eyes
eyes
only. For
only.
our eyes only, yeah. Like this is something I'm trying to teach my kids. I've got an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and right now when they
Oh.
draw, they're very much like it needs to be perfect the first time I draw it, and if it's not, I'm gonna be so upset. So I try to show them my sketching process. I'm like, look, mommy draws and like undos and erases a billion times before I get to my final.
Yes, no, that is
So
so true. That's also a question for the chat. Chat, do you guys like when you sketch, are you trying to reach perfection when you first sketch, or are you kind of like everything's everywhere, like the lines are wiggly, you're just trying to get your idea from your head down to the paper or the digital paper, you would say? Let us
yes.
know in the chat. We love to know if you guys are like us, where we kind of our sketches are a little messy.
Yep. So here's my messy sketch. I know that I want to make it kind of like a thick, possibly mono line width. I'm going to say mono line. This is not because, again, it's my messy sketch, but I want it
Hmm.
to be about equal weight. And I know that I want to have some of those stripes in that style to allude to the candy cane aesthetic. Now, you could just like refine this over and over again, like just drawing very physically, or you can utilize one of the tools that I like to use in Fresco, which is the eyedropper down here
Hmm.
has like a multicolored drop function right there, if you can kind of see approximately where I'm pointing.
Hmm.
So if I were to like even, I could even like, I'll switch right now to under basic. I'm going to pick the hard round brush and I could even just click on that eyedropper and click on the multicolor and then drag that tool over to here. And you can
Hmm.
kind of see if you look like 2 spots down from the eyedropper tool on the left, you can kind of see where it's kind of hovering. If I
Hmm.
just do this, it's already picked that up as a swatch.
Mm.
If I go back to a hard round brush, you can see now that it like picked up that
Wow.
from here. I can make it a little bit bigger so you can see it.
That is very cool, which gives you
Yeah,
that peppermint look.
kind of like a peppermint look, right? But again,
Oh,
this was like by accident. I just happened to have like a black and a red, so it's sort of in the right theme. We're gonna make that swatch a little bit more refined before we actually letter Mary.
mm-hmm.
And the way that we're gonna do that is we're gonna make a swatch that looks a lot like, I'll just sketch it out again because I sketch everything. Your swatch is gonna look, let's make sure that's black so you can see it. It's gonna look kind of like this. Like if you were to take a
Wow.
pepper or a candy cane and like cut it in half,
Mm-hmm.
you slice it, you probably would see something a little bit like this,
Yeah,
where it's
that
got
type
like
of
the thick
design.
lines and
Mm-hmm.
it's got the thinner lines. And we're gonna make it in red, not this black, but this is just a sketch to kind of refer to when I'm actually making that swatch before I eyedrop it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna do a new layer and I'm gonna turn off my background layers so that you've got this check mark pattern in the background, which just means that there's no color behind it because I also don't want to pick up any white when I do this.
Gotcha.
And I will go back
That helps
to,
you kind of see it more clearly and not pick up anything. Okay.
yeah, especially because
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start with white since like this part of the candy cane is white and white just like you
Mm-hmm.
can't really see it. So I'm gonna, before I put down, because I like the hard brown brush because you can literally just stamp it on the canvas and it's a perfect circle. Before I
Mm-hmm.
do that though, I'm gonna turn on my grid settings so that I can use a grid to help me to make this swatch.
Mm-hmm.
That's on the right side. At the top, you can kind of see my finger dragging it. I'm gonna click on that grid symbol to pull up my grids. And then I'll turn it on down here and you can see that I turn up the opacity, the grid lines are here.
Oh yeah, there they are.
And then under spacing, it says 680 pixels. I don't really look at the exact number. I just take my pencil and I drag it to about where I want it to be. So maybe like I'm referring to this guy right here.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm probably going to make my swatch a little bit bigger than that. So we'll just stick to this grid line and we're going to put our circle right here. I just need like 4 lines to work with.
Perfect. And you made your grid lines to be pink?
I did.
I love that.
I don't know if this is like something that from my agency days, but anytime we had anything that's like for placement only, it was always in this hot magenta color because none of our clients had that as their brand colors. So I'm
Right.
used to using it now. And I
Well,
don't really use that
clearly
color that much either.
it's my favorite color. So, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
happy.
I like it better than like red, for instance. I don't know why. Yeah, the magenta makes me happy,
Yeah.
but it's also not going to get confused with my actual sketches. So it's
Right.
my go-to
Especially for the
color.
holiday time. And just to let you know, the chat, they are talking. So Penny um said crazy sketches over pretty sketches. Alessandra said, I've learned to not be so critical to myself when I sketch or do thumbnails, but I had struggle at first and want it to be perfect. Um, Penny again said, life is too short to be critical of our sketches. Amen to that.
Absolutely. So I'm going to draw the red part of the candy cane.
Hmm.
If you didn't notice, I just made a layer above and I tapped on that little arrow right there to make it a clipping mask so that I can draw right on top of it without worrying about like fitting it exactly to the edge of the circle.
Hmm.
And then I'm going to take under sketching, I'm going to use the pen here because it's like a nice thin inky brush that is mostly monoline. So I don't have to worry too much about like textures or anything right now. And I'm going to
Hmm.
make it a little bit smaller. This does not have to be perfect. If you want it to be perfect, you could use the symmetry tool in Photoshop. But for the purposes of this swatch, we're just going to kind of do what we need to do in Fresco. I'm filling it and there's this color margin that popped up. So I'm just dragging it up so that I don't get that awkward flood or like you can see in the beginning, there's that kind of random edge, white edge there.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna do something like that and then something like this. I'm drawing one side and just letting it, I'm being lazy with my straight lines and just letting it snap for me. I'm drawing one side so that I can flip it. So I'm not gonna do the whole thing manually.
Oh, the tricks,
The shortcuts.
the shortcuts. I'm telling you.
The shortcuts when you can,
I'm
especially during
telling
the
you.
holidays when you're probably super busy.
I'm telling you, and you need the design done. Yes.
Yes.
I think that's why I really do love like working in fresco because once you get the tips and the tricks down, it can cut like your process down by like hours.
Yes. Yep. So I duplicated this by tapping on the layer and then I
Mhm.
duplicate the layer. And then I'm just gonna click on this move tool here. And then at the top right, I'm gonna flip it and then just drag it over so that it's reflected. And then merge it down because I don't need separate layers there. They're good
Mhm.
now. Actually, I might just draw this. Oops. Let's draw this straight through. And then to kind of give it a little bit more of a 3D effect, I'm going to add a little bit of shading to the bottom here so that it's going to look a little bit more 3D when we use the multicolor drop tool.
Mhm.
So a new clipping mask. And then I like to use a lot of texture in my work. So when I shade, I pick a more textury type of brush. One of
Really?
my favorite textury type of brush sets in here, you can access by going to the plus sign at the bottom and discover new brushes. That'll pull up like, if you're someone who impulsively buys brushes all the time, like just go here first because there's so many collections and there's a lot of
Yes,
good brushes in here.
they are.
And I am trying to find where I followed it. It is the spatter brush set here, I think.
Oh, I love that brush set. I use that quite a bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of good textures. And then the Mega Pack also is a really good one.
Yep. Hmm.
I
I
think
know
that's
that
where I got it from. Yeah.
that's so funny. I feel like a lot of people always ask me, where do I get my brushes? And I'm like, man, if you just take like a good 30 minutes just kind of scrolling through Fresco, you will really find, and then, clicking that plus button and then it takes you to the larger range.
Yeah.
They have so many that you can use. And I just always tell people like open up a blank sheet of paper and then just go to town with it to just see
Mhm.
what it looks like, you know?
Yeah, totally, right?
Hmm.
So I have saved actually all my favorite brushes under favorites, which like if you're using a brush, you can just like there's that star there, you can just tap on that and it'll show up in your favorites. So when you've got a billion brushes because you're trying to try them all, having that favorites is a nice way to bookmark
Yes.
so that you can like reach back in there and not search forever.
Right,
So
exactly.
yeah, this is one of the spatter brushes. I think this is the one that I want to use. I'm just kind of testing it out. Actually, I want to have something a little bit more pixelated. That's kind of more like this.
Ooh.
And I am going to switch the mode on this so that it's not that weird color. Tapping on that side right here,
Hmm.
changing my blend mode to multiply, and then turning that opacity down just a little bit so that there is a little bit of shading to this candy cane.
Yeah, that really gives it more depth.
It's like a subtle depth. If you want to get
Yeah.
really realistic, you can keep going. I like to
Hmm.
kind of have a in between really flat work and super realistic. I'm like probably closer to the flatter work, but like one or two
Hmm.
layers, and that's good enough for me.
Right. You just want to give a little bit of depth, but not like too much.
Yes. So now I'm going to move my canvas out a little bit. We're going back to the eyedropper tool, selecting the multicolor and dragging it to here. And then now when I go to letter with the hard round brush that's under basic, oops, Let's do a brand new layer, not a clipping mask. Let's check it. So now it looks more candy cane-like.
Oh, that is nice. I'm like amazed right now. I
It's a lot
learned
of
something
fun.
new. Yeah.
Yeah. And you may have noticed now that I'm doing it, I'm like, I think I drank too much coffee before this live. So my lettering looks really wobbly, right?
It
And
looks good.
a great thing about the brush settings is you can go down to smoothing at the bottom, that little wavy symbol, and just turn it all
Hmm.
the way up. My favorite area is probably in the range of like 75 to 85. And then now it's like a little bit smoother.
Perfection.
And I
Penny in
might
the
like
chat
breathe
says,
in. Yeah.
right,
Hold
right.
my breath for a second.
No, I love that. Penny in the chat said that came together quick, and it did. I'm like so
Yeah.
amazed, right? I learned something new literally every Adobe Live. I'm like, I wish I could. I have to go back and revisit them because I'm always like, I need to do that from now on. That is so
Yeah.
cool.
So you've got this, and then you can like imagine doing that manually, right? Like this is a lot faster. And then you can go
Absolutely.
back in and like start to add in maybe some shading to it. So I can like
Hmm.
um, maybe do the same thing I was doing earlier, go a little bit darker,
Quick
and then
question
start
for
the
you,
right shade.
Belinda.
Yes.
Catherine in the chat said, that's so cool. Does that only work with the round brush?
The round brush. You can use some other brushes too. So like I can show you. And I'm like, you can start to go back in and shade it and like add in highlights, add in shadows, and then it becomes like really candy cane like. But
Hmm.
yeah, if you wanted to try a different brush, I'll go back into my color palette, go under recent, and you'll see that most recent one and a few other iterations. Um, you can do it with other brushes as well. So like hard round
Cool.
variable, it kind of does
Hmm.
it. So I would just like test it with some of your favorite brushes to see what kind of cool effects you can get, and you can find like a happy medium. For me, I like to just stick to the hard round one when it comes to something like this because it just is pretty simple, like in my brain. But you can do some really cool, more complex kind of combinations with different brushes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is the first style. And oh, one more thing is if you don't like how that looks, you can go back in and just kind of trim it off.
Okay.
So like that's what I'll usually do is I'll go back in and like maybe I don't want it to have that like it just got chopped off and it's like pointing at you kind of angle. I
Right.
might go back in and just erase it. Um, and just kind of like trim it off a little bit, like so.
Cool. Okay. I was gonna ask you, is there a way to kind of get rid of it so it's a little bit more like,
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah, exactly. More rounded. And then
yeah.
one thing to keep in mind with that, because it's kind of a hack, is it does help to have a sketch to draw over first, because then you can like purposely overshoot so that you know that you're cutting it off over there. So like I would just extend like the starting point and the end point so that I have
Hmm.
more material to round it off, or else it's going to look prematurely chopped
Mm.
off. So
Right. Right.
yeah. All right, so there's style number one for you, our candy cane style. And then style number two is something that I do. Like if you look in my portfolio, you'll see that I do it quite frequently just because I think I just really like it, which is like a 3D type of lettering, but it's 3D in the shape of whatever food it is, whether it's cake or cookies or whatnot.
Hmm.
So we are going to do one that is inspired by cookies, in particular
Ooh,
Christmas cookies. That was
yum.
actually not a tradition in my family. Um, my parents, like, they don't celebrate Christmas. They're from Taiwan. They didn't celebrate it
Oh,
back then.
cool.
So
Hmm.
there weren't these traditions until I was much older and had friends whose families would make Christmas cookies. And I think
Hmm.
when I realized that that was a thing, I was just like mind blown. Like, you can get
Yes,
cookies during this time of year too. It's so cool.
I'm
So,
telling you.
cookies.
That is so cool. Like, so you, your family, your parents are from Taiwan. Were you born in Taiwan or born in the States?
I was born in the States, so I
Okay.
am very Americanized. I speak Mandarin kind of like embarrassingly badly.
Oh
I'm
no.
a little shy to like speak to people who are from Taiwan because I'm like, beware of my Mandarin's really bad, but I will
Right.
try my best to converse with you.
Right, right. Wow, that is so cool. Oh my gosh. So now your parents, they do all of the Christmas traditions that you do now, especially with your kids. Is that what happens now?
Yeah, it's kind of I would say it's kind of like a blend. They try to do more of it now. Like one thing that I do with the kids that I didn't even know was a thing was Elf on the Shelf. Do you guys do Elf on the Shelf at all?
Yeah. Oh, I don't have children, but I've
Yeah.
definitely seen that posted on my Instagram quite a few times.
Yes. So I actually can't speak too loudly about it because one of mine is homesick and the grandparents are watching her.
Oh no.
But
Okay.
yeah, we got one and we like have fun moving it around and stuff and
Oh,
seeing
nice.
seeing where they find them the next day.
Oh, cool. Do you put like a letter too? Because I've seen people either just move the elf around, but I've also seen people move the elf around and put a letter as if the elf left the letter for them to read.
Yeah, I have friends who do.
Mhm.
But I really much try to like stick to activities that I'm a low energy person. So I'm like, okay, what can I do consistently that's sustainable as well, right? Like if I go all
Right.
out the first year, I'm gonna have a hard time living up to the hype for the rest of the
Yes,
years.
replicating that every year. Oh, they're gonna be like,
Yeah.
"What happened, mommy?"
Yeah. So we don't do that. We just move the elf around it.
Oh, good. No, that to me, that is all you need. I don't really
Yeah.
think you need a letter. I think you just need to move it around.
Yeah, I have friends who are really good about it. It's like elaborate scenarios that they play out. They like have a little cooking scene unfold, and they're like, "Oh, I guess the elf
What?
was cooking last night," and like they leave letters and presents. Um,
Oh my
yeah, we're
gosh.
not
I'm
really
probably
able to
more
do
like
that.
you. Yeah, I'm more like you where I'm like, let me just start out how I can continue it.
Yeah. So I'm sketching out a plan here for how I want to do these cookies. Um, Someone had mentioned gingerbread, which that's
Mhm.
also kind of what I was thinking. You know how like in gingerbread houses you have like all the frosting and the icing.
Mhm.
So it's probably gonna be like iced cookies. And I know I want it to be 3D. So this is approximately how it's gonna look. We're gonna have this like cookie base. It's gonna be 3D. We're gonna go in after that and like ice it and then probably add some sprinkles because that's what makes it really fun, right? With Christmas, it's
Yes,
always
that.
colorful.
Uh-huh.
So in the holidays, so something like this.
Nice. Corinne in the chat said, "We didn't do Elf on the Shelf when I was younger, but I feel like it would scare me." I think it would have scared me too if I were a little younger.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
kind of true, actually.
Oh my gosh, that's actually a good question for the chat. Let us know what kind of holiday traditions you and your family used to do or what you currently do now. Like Elf on the Shelf, Christmas cookies. I know for me, my mom, she loves to host and do a Christmas craft. So we've done ornaments one time. We've done the little drummer boy people, Nutcracker. So we get to have fun kind of just painting and doing that stuff. So that's like a tradition that we do. So if you're in the chat, let us know the traditions, the holiday traditions that you guys do.
So I am currently, while we think about those holiday traditions, if you do
Hmm.
cookies, please give me tips on how you decorate. Would love to know. Maybe we can kind of add it into this design here.
Oh, that would be great.
So I'm just doing like block letters right now and tracing over my sketch. What I'll usually do, and you'll see it later on too, is I'll do the messy sketch and then I'll do a neater sketch on top of it and then
Hmm.
I'll execute. Or I might even spend a few more layers refining each time to get that letter to look right, because sometimes it just takes a few. And right now I'm overlaying it with another one of my favorite brushes. It is the Natural Inker brush. I believe it's actually it might just be under ink, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
Under the ink brushes. And I like it because it's got that rough edge to it. And that's just like a preference of mine of like having that textured edge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
filling it in and taking advantage of the color margin to not have to manually fill in these gaps as much.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'll even leave them if I want there to be more texture inside the letters.
Right.
And
So
then
do
I'll go
you
back.
use this brush a little bit more than like the round brush, or it's depending on what you're actually creating?
Yeah, I definitely, this is like my go-to brush in Fresco when it comes to executing my lettering, at least, and like just like establishing the outlines of the shapes I'm using. I will often go to this one the most.
Hmm. Okay.
And then the round brush is when I want to do cool effects like the candy cane.
Yeah, that was very, very, very cool.
Okay, so there's that one. I might actually, for the sake of time, stick to one letter, but pretend I
Okay.
did it for the O and the Y as well.
Right, right.
um, so now that I've got my letter established, I will then duplicate that and I will then drag it back this way to make that 3D portion.
Mm-hmm.
Before I drag it back though, I'm going to fill it with a darker color so that you don't get confused between the front letter and the back part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of go over like
Oh,
this.
yeah.
And then you go back in and you connect the corners.
Wow. And quickly, if you're just joining us, hi, Felipe. If you're just joining us, we're here with Belinda. She is a lettering artist and she's showing us how to create a holiday greeting card.
All right. So now we have the front and the back. We'll go back in and add a little bit of texture to the front and a little bit more texture to the side and some shading. So I'll go back in and go back to my favorites and might just use that same texture brush that I used earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, let's see, if I hold down on this, I can eyedrop it, the color right away, and then go here and play around with saturation and brightness to find a slightly darker looking color for
Oh,
like
yeah.
some crumbly cookie feels.
Mm-hmm.
Do the same thing here. And I like to use the clipping mask rather than like doing it bright on the same layer so that I've got more control in what I want to do. A lot of times I might like want to erase. So I find that it's a lot easier to do that when it's on a separate layer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the nice thing about Fresco is you can like erase with the same brush too. So like say if I'm like, oh, it's too dark there, I can just find my little, that dot there. I'm actually going to move it
Mm-hmm.
over here. I like it on the left side for my, because I'm right-handed, but if you're left-handed, you can move it over there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just hold it and erase with the same brush, which is like really convenient for things that are for when you're using brushes that are textured, because then you don't have to like use this eraser for that like really hard edge.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so it's kind of nice to be able to do that.
Yeah, so it can kind of mimic what the texture that you put down first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Alessandra said, now I have to get cookies. Thanks, Belinda.
Another great way to get into the festive holiday spirit.
Yes, it really is. I mean, we're all gonna get Christmas cookies after this. It's fine.
Yes. So I'm going to do a little bit of that frosting effect. And
Mm-hmm.
this is when I'm going back in now with just the round brush because I'm just going to draw it exactly in the width that I want it to be in. So I'm moving the size down to like, here seems good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems like how it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Kind
Because
of
it's
like
usually
outlining it.
like, yeah, it's usually like a little bit like how you're doing it. The frosting's not all over the cookie, but it's just perfectly in the center of the cookie.
Yeah, you can like line it up or fill it however you want.
Do you like making cookies, decorating cookies, or just eating the cookie?
In this order: eating, decorating, making.
Yes. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Yes. My kids are definitely, they're huge fans of decorating cookies, and sometimes we'll just, I'm not really great at baking. So sometimes we'll just get the pre-made kind at the stores.
Oh yeah.
The
Oh,
kit, like the cookie
definitely.
kits, and they come with
Yeah.
everything.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Especially around that time. It's just so hectic and it's such a crazy time. Fun time, but
hmm
just a lot going on, wrapping up client work and all of that stuff. So I know like decorating cookies, you're like, I need something easy.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm duplicating it. This is just to create a soft shadow,
Mm-hmm.
play around with opacity and multiply a little bit so that it can pick up some of that texture underneath the cookie, or underneath the frosting if you want it to show that way. So now you've got more of this like cookie kind of um, iced cookie effect. And then if you wanted to go a little bit further, another thing that I'll do is I'll add some sprinkles like these. And you can actually do that. So my sprinkle is like, let's see, let's make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. Okay. So it's like a nice round sprinkle. You can do like the stick kind as well. I like the round ones. I feel like they're just like cute and happy and kind of like ornaments when it comes to the holidays.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let me do that on a separate layer just to be safe. I like to keep everything separate in terms of how I layer up my lettering too.
Absolutely.
And then I'll maybe add a clipping mask and do a little bit of texture again,
Mm-hmm.
going under my favorites, picking up that same one.
Especially if you want to change something, it's nice to be able to, because you put it in its own layer, you're able to change it or even get rid of it without having to, figure out, okay, if it's on all one layer, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to redo the texture. And so
Yeah,
I get that.
especially if you are planning on licensing out your work, it's nice to have everything separated because one, you have all your objects isolated so you can use them elsewhere in whatever that product is. And
Hmm.
then two, you can take advantage of like multiple colorways. And I just feel like you have way more control with the colors if everything is separated out as opposed to like
Hmm.
slapping on an adjustment layer, which you can also
Right.
do. But it's
Hmm.
nice to have both.
Right. And that reminds me, I would just love to hear more about. I feel like as artists, especially artists who gone from 9 to 5 to full-time artists, what was that time in your life where you just felt like, okay, I'm ready to be full-time?
Yeah. So for me, I would say it was kind of like not necessarily I'm ready, but it was I was getting a lot of client work. I had a second kid and dealing with like young children in general, and also working full time at my job. They're just like my plates were completely like overloaded and something
Hmm.
had to go. So thankfully, like looking at our finances, I have a spouse who's also able to bring an income too. So there's that padding as well for like we had stuff saved up, we had another income. So it was okay for me to take the risk to
Hmm.
start my own business. It was pretty scary though, because I was like, well, what if it doesn't work out? Can I get a job again?
Right.
Now we have to deal with the health insurance is coming from me. So now we have to get our own health insurance. What if suddenly the clients stop like
Right. All of these
requesting work?
things.
And yeah, there's like a lot of
Hmm.
what ifs. But I think just that like desire to break into business, like I want to work, like I want more time to be able to do this. Just like outweighed all of the fear.
Hmm.
So I took the plunge in 2019. And I remember when I went to turn in my 2 weeks notice, I was like sweating bullets and like
Right.
screaming internally. Cause even though I felt ready, I was still like so scared to make it
You're still,
official.
yeah, you're still nervous about it.
Yeah. But that Monday after, was like the happiest Monday of my life. I was like, I'm
Yes.
doing this and I'm excited for the weekdays, you know?
Yes, I know it
Yeah.
hits different when it's your company and you are able to be creative. A
Yes.
Monday hits different.
Yes. So I'm using the multicolor eyedropper again to do these sprinkles. And I went into settings in my brush under the round brush, and I'm just turning out the spacing so that they're like spaced out now instead of like the candy cane, which was, one long line.
Right.
If you space it
Mm-hmm.
out, you can kind of do sprinkles.
Mm-hmm.
Uh like kind of like that. Let's do it a little
Cool.
bit smaller. You can see. So you can kind of like put in your sprinkles like this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing around with the size a little bit to see how I want it to be. And then like if you wanted to change the colors up, you could go to the sidebar here with hue and saturation and like play around with the colors a little bit too.
Cool.
And then like say maybe I wanted like a slightly like bluer color.
Mm-hmm.
I put a mask on here and I can go back in and erase it to like alternate the colors if I wanted to.
Wow.
I do this sometimes when I run short on time and I'm like, I need to get something done. I'm just gonna do a
Yeah.
hack like this. When I
Mm-hmm.
have more time, I will actually, because I like it, manually draw my sprinkles and manually shade everything. That's like
Mm-hmm.
if I'm like in creative flow and I just want to do an execution while watching something on Netflix.
Right.
But when I'm rushed, then I'll do this.
Right. No,
Yeah.
that is a great tip right there. That was very cool. In the chat, if you have any questions for Belinda, definitely ask away. I will let her know the question for her to answer you. Because that is a very cool tip that you just showed us.
Yes.
Mhm.
It's just one of those like when you're kind of on a time crunch, you figure out what you can do to be a little bit faster and
Right.
still get like the same desired end result that you
Right.
had in mind to begin with.
Right, exactly.
So I just selected everything and grouped it so I can turn it off and show you how you can move this into a greeting card. So I'll just turn that off here and start with let's see. Yeah, let's start with this. Let me make sure I turn this on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, let's say you wanted to do a greeting card design, and here is because I love food, I love to do food pun type greeting cards just because it's like the best excuse for me to draw the food and then have a laugh at the silly pun.
Right, right.
So what I had was I think it was have a sweet holiday.
Oh,
Because we're thinking candy canes and we're thinking
yeah.
gingerbread and cookies and frosting. So
Yes, that is sweet. All of that
have
is
a
very sweet.
sweet holiday.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the play is off of the word sweet. So that
Mm-hmm.
is when you're lettering that message, you're thinking to yourself, I got to make sure that that is obvious. So, like the payoff with the pun and the joke is like visually obvious as well. So, that's going to be like sweet is going to look sweet. And then holiday is like the next important word in this lineup. So, I'm going to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
holiday is like a nice balance to sweet. And then have a is like the least important part of the message. Like if you just
Right.
glanced at a card and you saw sweet holiday, you would understand it before you had to pick it up and read the rest of the details.
Right.
So that's like just basic me thinking about hierarchy and level of importance and what I'm going to illustrate and not illustrate. I decided to illustrate all of these words, but I made sure that sweet and holiday were the most
Yeah, the
important.
most
Yeah.
right. Really focusing on those. Alessandra in the chat asked, have you ever baked a cookie or any food in a shape of your own lettering?
Not yet, because I am not that great at baking. So being able to manipulate cookies like that is kind of disastrous at the moment.
Right.
So if I can get them to be round, I'm like a happy camper.
Right,
But yeah, I
exactly.
see people who can like create with food and it's super cool, like letter with food. I am not one of those people. I can digitally letter with food and I will
Right.
eat the physical food and enjoy it
Yes.
very much, but I
Right.
can't produce it myself. Yeah, at least.
Right. Yeah. You might be
Yeah.
able to one day. I don't know if they have like a little stencil that you might be able to kind of work off of.
Maybe, yeah. Actually, I have a set from a friend now that you talk about it, or now that you mentioned it.
Oh, yeah.
I could try doing that. Haven't ventured into
Yes.
it. So when it comes to greeting card illustrations or any kind of illustration that I do, I will generally challenge myself and recommend others to try at least 3 to 4 thumbnail designs so that you can stretch your ideas further than the very first one that comes to your head, because sometimes it's
Mm.
not the best. For me, this was the
Mm-hmm.
first one that came to my head, which was, oh, I'm going to make it all cookies. And then I
Mm.
realized I've done something that was kind of like mostly cookies. And I was like, maybe I don't want to do that. So let's try something else. My next idea was, all right, well, we have the candy canes and we have the cookie effect. So maybe we can do both
Oh.
candy cane and cookie style. And then on
Mm-hmm.
top of that, have like 2 different lettering styles too.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, that's what I like to do. I like to just like mix and match lettering styles, partly because it takes me like at minimum 6 to 8 hours to do a lettering piece. And like halfway in, I start getting a little bit bored of my ideas. So I like to have some variety to work with
Right.
before I
Uh-huh.
like give up. Cause I know one of the hardest things is to actually finish your art piece. Um, you just like get into the nitty gritty part of your design. You're like, everything sucks.
Right, right,
Stuck
right,
as an
right.
artist, I'm gonna give up. Um,
Right. You just kind of
so
got to
yeah,
walk away from it and then come back.
you do. So that
Uh-huh.
was design number 2. Design number 3 was, well, I really like drawing gingerbread houses, so maybe I draw a huge one, and then that is the main illustration, and the lettering's kind of like more secondary, and it can just be frosting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last fourth one was like, okay, just one more. And I pushed myself, and I was like, I'm out of ideas.
No, you did like
But
4 amazing sketches. Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
So I tried these 4. And the one that I picked is when it comes to personal work, I just go with my gut. I'm like, which one do I like the most? Which one am I most excited to do? It was
Mm-hmm.
this one, mainly because I like that there was a little bit more movement to the letters. Kind of has this whimsical, playful feel when it's tilted like that, to me at least. And I liked the illustration. I thought would be fun to do because it's like a gingerbread house and trees, but they're going to be cookies and they look like they're in a landscape, but they're edible. So
All of
that
that.
was what I went with.
Yes.
After that, when I do these sketches, I will either do them on the iPad or sometimes, if I'm really struggling, I will start in my sketchbook because sometimes I feel like it's just easier for you to draw pencil to paper and not have to worry about perfecting anything because you can't undo,
Right.
and just start there.
Mm-hmm.
If I do it on paper, then I'll just take a photo of it and bring it into this canvas. But since it's already here, if I do it on the iPad, I will pick the one that I liked and then duplicate it, bring that out of the group too. So we'll turn this group off and we will fill the background with white so that we're not distracted by that checker pattern.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need all these separate layers. I just have like, if you want to know, like this is how I started with the sketch with the lettering and I surrounded it with illustrations after.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't need that separated anymore. So I'll just merge this. And then the reason why I don't do it like at size in the beginning is again to like minimize that perfectionism. If
Mm-hmm.
I do it small, then I can't really like go in there with the details.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I use like a really fat brush, that also helps to like not spend too much time sketching. But I'll enlarge it to the size of the canvas,
That is
turn down the
very
opacity,
cool. I love that sketch.
like erase the edges that I don't need.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, let's go like a little bit fatter. And then,
Oh, quick
oh,
question for you. Corinne has a question. asking how to go from a final drawing to a formatted, saved file that you would submit to a client.
Yeah. So I guess it might depend on what the client needs. Generally speaking, I aim for flattened images as much as I can,
Mm-hmm.
unless the client needs something that's layered. Um, but I will first like ask the client if I have no idea what they're asking for, like, could you send the specs or the template?
Mm-hmm.
And then go from there. For something like a greeting card, I will provide the client with, if they need like a layered file, I will provide them with a file that has, I think, just like 2 or 3 layers. One is the background layer, second is illustrations, and the third is the lettering. Or it could
Mm-hmm.
even just be background illustrations or background layer and then all the illustrations, just like 2 layers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I'll do separately. So I'll like duplicate this file that has a billion layers for me to use and then give them the ones that they just need to use. So hopefully
Mm-hmm.
that helps a little bit. So yeah, once I enlarge my sketch, I'll turn down the opacity and then I start setting in guidelines to start to refine the illustration like at size. So one that I'll do is I'll turn on the grid lines, maybe this opacity, make it a little bit lighter. I like to adjust the spacing so that I can kind of see like where it hits on the outside. Like, okay, immediately I can see like this candy cane is jutting over this line and then this candy cane is like a little bit inside. So I know when I do the refinement, I actually want them to be kind of like balanced just
Mm-hmm.
because they're almost symmetrical, I guess.
Yeah, the
So the
even.
spacing, yeah, you want the
Right.
spacing to like look good. And then the
Mm-hmm.
space above, oops, the space at the top right here and the space below, we want that to be kind of equal too. And one thing with licensing for greeting cards that I like to do is I like to keep all my illustrations like kind of in the middle, and not get it cropped off, especially if I'm working in a raster program like this one where I won't get that image back.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll work like that. But if my final piece is actually like, here, I've got a card right here. Like this one right here is
Like
fully
more
to the edge.
centered. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I will crop that in for the client, but this actual file has like the image kind of bleeding off on the sides so that I've got more material to work with. So that's like one thing
Gotcha.
that you want to keep in mind if you're setting, if you want to like license your work, is make sure you've got the images so you don't have the client and they give you a dimension to use. And you're like, oh, great, it's just a little bit wider than my final art. I have a billion layers of textures here and the candy cane is cut off. Now I have to
Yes.
redraw the whole thing.
No,
So
that is great advice. That is definitely great advice because no one likes to have to redraw
yeah. And then
if you don't have to.
exactly. Um, so yeah, keep that in mind. And then when it comes to guidelines, I'll like go back in with my magenta and I'll probably like just I like to do this on top. I just do guidelines upon guidelines. Like even the sketches now, like a guideline in my head. But I'll
Hmm.
just kind of draw more lines to indicate like, okay, pay attention to this side, pay attention to
Right.
this side. Um,
Right.
and then if I wanted to like adjust the slant on here, I'll use the ruler tool on the bottom right corner. And actually I already have it slanted, but you can like move it to the angle that you need it to be. And then just kind of like draw
Gotcha.
in the
Like
spots
a
that you need to
view.
reference.
Hmm.
So like that will help once you start to actually letter it to not make it look wonky. 'Cause sometimes it looks wonky because your angles are ever so slightly off and it wasn't done on
Right.
purpose.
Hmm.
So this is helpful for that. And this one I kind of wanted to be a little bit like that.
Corinne in the chat said, Belinda, I saw you post that card was at Trader Joe's. How exciting to see your work in the wild.
Oh yeah. Yes, you can. I think it's this card, right? You can find this card at Trader Joe's right
Uh-huh.
now. So
Cool.
very fun. That's like my go-to store for snacks. So I was
Absolutely.
pretty excited that we could like start licensing work together because I'm like, oh great. I can
I'm
like get my
already
snacks
there.
and look
Right.
for cards. And I've got friends who have cards there too. So it's like a whole pile of like friends' work in the shelves, which is really fun.
Oh, I love to see that. I love to see that. And
I'm gonna
just so
skip
you know,
ahead a
you
little bit.
have, right, you have like 25 minutes left.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so skip ahead. Let's pretend I did this. This would be like 1 to 2 hours later, maybe even
Mm-hmm.
3. It takes time. So I'll go back in and I just like redraw everything compared to the sketch, a little bit more upright, a little bit more centered. When I'm sketching this out, again, I'll keep like everything separate layers because then I can start to position it where I want it to be and like scale it and everything since it's still in the sketch form
Mm-hmm.
to kind of work together well. And then the next thing I'll do is I'll work in a color palette. This comes a little bit faster for me now, only because I'm kind of in this period of using the same kind of colors.
Mm-hmm.
I find that it helps really like well to establish my style a little bit with these like sort of vibrant pastels. And they also make me really happy when I work with them. So that's also a good thing because when I'm working with certain color palettes, like really dark colors, sometimes I find that I'm just like not in that headspace to like
Right.
vibe with the colors. And then my art kind of reflects that too. So yeah, I like these
Mm-hmm.
colors. When you're choosing a color palette for something like a greeting card that you want to license, one thing to keep in mind is the holiday of the card that you're doing, and the timeline. So what I mean by that is if you're working with like holiday specific cards like Christmas, Valentine's Day, or Halloween or something, where it's like a really short period of time that's on the shelves, I
Mm-hmm.
find that it's helpful to work with slightly more conventional color schemes. Like you can do like Christmas colors, but with like a pastel twist, which is kind of like what this is. But I wouldn't go like totally out there. I found in the past that's a little bit harder for the client to want to select that because they're like, oh, it's just for a more limited time period. So we kind of want to play it safe. But if it's like a thank you card that's year round, then you can kind of go a little bit more fun with your color explorations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just like something that I stick to.
That's good advice.
And then when you're doing your color palette, one thing that I like to check before I actually start to apply everything is a really quick color block to make sure that these colors actually work together well. And that includes like picking a really fat brush, like the hard round brush, and
Mm-hmm.
just like going in there and really quickly blobbing of the colors. And I'll just go back into my settings here, reset that at the bottom so it's not scattered anymore.
Right.
And yeah, I'll just like literally scribble over and just be like, is this gonna work? I'll fill up
Mm.
my background color
So at this
with
point, you're
like,
trying to see if the color will work.
yeah, I'm like
Okay.
testing my palette now and just making sure
Mm-hmm.
like I'm confirming that it's gonna work okay together before I actually spend all this time individually coloring, only to realize at the end that something was like horribly off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'll just like go like this, and because this helps me to think like, okay, especially if I want to assign certain colors to things, like my cookies are all going to be like the same color,
Right.
then I can kind of check and see like, okay, is this like a good distribution? It's a little hard to see if I'm gonna like um if I want to like duplicate the layer and add in that shadow in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Is that gonna like be enough to bring it out, or do I have to adjust this yellow a little bit? um
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. So I'm just
That's
gonna
a
play with
great
this.
idea, Belinda. I've again, I'm learning something new to add to my process because I definitely don't test it out fully. And so to kind of see you test it out even with the background color that you are choosing, that is definitely a great tip. Lisa in the chat also said great tip to test colors.
Yeah, so then it's like
Mhm.
if you're like, well, this looks okay, but like what if it's a pink background? You can test it in this sort of unrefined version versus
Mhm.
you have 100 layers later and you're trying to find like, is this the right color? And like, oh no, I separated out all my cookies onto different layers, and if I want to check if that's the right color, now I have to like manually change them all.
Mhm.
This is just a lot faster and like more rough, I guess. It's like the same idea of when you're sketching, you don't need that sketch to be perfect. You're going to do
Right.
iterations before you get to the final. It's kind of like the same concept, but with colors.
Yeah. You're just trying to
So
just test it out.
this was my color block from earlier. A little more refined, I think, but still, as you can see, like pretty blobby. But I'm like, okay, yeah, I think this can work. So I
Yes.
went from there and then I started to execute. And now you can see, like, okay, we've done some of the earlier stuff, right? With the cookie kind of lettering style,
Yep.
same deal. Actually, if you may, I don't know if you've noticed, but when I was color blocking, I actually realized this originally was going to be like a ribbon kind of lettering, but I
Hmm.
realized in my color block that I didn't like the idea of having the red up there. I liked it to be sandwiched between cookies because
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't know, there's so much cookies here. Like, I kind of want more cookies up there. So it
True.
led me to decide that this is going to be more of a cookie style. And the
No,
color
I
blocking
love
was
that.
actually what helped.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Gotcha. I love that. I love how you showed us like you broke down your sketch, just kind of showing us, okay, this is how you create the cookie. This is how you create the peppermint candy. And then
Mm-hmm.
to see it kind of all put together in your final look is really cool.
Yeah. So it's like you just like break everything down and then you put it back together instead
Mm-hmm.
of thinking of it as like this is a completely blank canvas and I have to manually draw everything. I find that like going in chunks is less overwhelming and helps me to make it to the end better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now I'm gonna draw a candy cane. I realize I think I used a different pink, but that's okay. Something like this. Again, I think I'm gonna just up the smoothing because
Just
I'm
to
too
help you along.
caffeinated today. My because one of my kids is sick, so this morning because she was sick last night, I like made twice as much coffee as usual because I'm like it's
Oh
a
my
full pot of coffee
goodness.
kind of day.
Oh Lord.
I didn't drink the full pot. Some other people drank from it too, but I didn't
Right,
think I had
right.
too much.
Oh my God. I can only imagine having a sick kid and still having to work. It's probably like, I need all the caffeine I can get.
Yeah, it helps. I'm so glad that coffee exists. Oh, I'm using the wrong brush. Okay. So let's do maybe actually I'm just gonna erase with the same brush.
Hmm.
Kind of like cut it off a little bit here.
And for everybody in the chat, if you would like to nominate yourself or someone else you know to be a guest on Adobe Live, submit your recommendations for creatives in the tab on Behance. We'd love to see you or your process, your creative process, and chat with you.
All right. So if I want to add in some more sprinkles and do the same thing as last time, let's just test it out and see if that's like okay. Seems like that could work.
Mm-hmm.
Oops. And kind of go like that. I could just stamp it too. I might just do that here because the spacing's a little bit off.
Mm-hmm. That curve.
Yeah. And if I like was not doing the slab, I might go back in and adjust the size a little bit so it's not outside of that line. But I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
for the sake of this live, we'll just kind of go like this for now. So you could do something like that. And then you can, like here, I'm like, well, these dots are a little bit heavy on the red. Like that's all I see now. So maybe I'll throw an adjustment layer on it and perhaps I'll take down the saturation just a little bit and lighten it up.
Mm.
Maybe play around with that just a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
then make sure that that is a clipping mask. So it's only on the sprinkles. And then we would do like more of the same effects that we did earlier, where this time I will actually lock the transparency so that's not affecting anything else besides what I drew for the frosting color, just so that I can like take a fat brush and just like make this really big basically and just kind of like swipe it over.
Wow.
Before I add a little bit of that shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go back in and create a few more of those sort of textury effects. Could do something like that, or but yeah, so this is like my general workflow is step one, I will do my thumbnail sketches and brainstorming. Step two, refine my sketch. Three, do the rough color block. And then four, I'll add the color and add the details. So color and details in that final step. And overall, it takes me like 6 to 8 hours, sometimes more if I'm trying to like push myself. It can get upwards to like 20 hours even on and off.
Wow.
Not in one sitting. But yeah, depending on like how complicated I want to get it.
Wow. But I love how you break it down, because I do think sometimes, especially if you're like in a bit of a, not a creative rut, but a little bit of a creative rut. Sometimes when you sit down and you open up a blank page, it can be so overwhelming.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I think kind of following, I like how you have like steps, right? Like you have the sketching part of it, the quick sketch a part of it, or even before then, in the beginning, you had us brainstorming the words that we would want to use, and connecting that to the illustration. So it's like you really do take it step by step by step, which is really cool.
Yeah, and that does help a lot with the rut. Like I actually am coming off of a mini sabbatical because my family moved to a new state. We're in Michigan now and we're building a house, and there's just like a lot of micro decisions involved with that process where you're like, I have no more creative juices left because all my decision making has been spent.
Right.
It's nice to like do some of that thinking in advance. So like sometimes my sketchbook, like your husband finding those notes in your files, it's the same thing with my sketchbook. I'll have just like notes, and it's like, okay, yeah, thanks, pass Belinda for like writing
Right.
that little like hand lettered phrase. Now I can letter it, and I even wrote down like details. I'm like, oh yeah, make it like with a style, and I'm like, okay, I can do that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And just so you know, Belinda, you have maybe like I would say 12 more minutes left.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's just speed this up a little bit, and I'll show you the final. Here is what the final ended up looking like. And take off those grid lines.
That is
And now you can see
beautiful.
this is what happens when you start to like layer things over and over again. Like I had some textures here and made the sprinkles different colors. I like to always add a little bit of a drop shadow at the end, just for that like little subtle effect to help it to stand out a bit more, and then sprinkle it like literally with more sprinkles. So
I
this
love
is
it.
generally the final piece.
And you see a little bit of like the candies that are the thumb drops. Is that what they're called? And then like the
Yes.
peppermint. Yeah.
Yeah, and like this effect was if you I can show you the layer breakdown too. Basically, let me see if I can find the gumdrops. They're right here. I have like a layer for one set of the colors and then another layer for the other set. And then each one just has like a two swipes of like that one brush I was just using of like a darker color, and then two swipes of another one. And then it has that textured effect of like the sugar on the gumdrops. And that is essentially how most of them go. Like this candy cane I went through, but then I added a little bit of shading so you can see kind of where it overlaps. And then the cookies was the same deal. Like you've got your main layer, you've got the 3D layer, you've got the texture layer, and then you have some like decorations on top.
That is so cool. And everybody in the chat agrees. Everybody's saying amazing, great work, Belinda. Wow. I'm always so amazed, like to think about the beginning of the stream to the end. I'm always, as an artist, I like fangirl over fellow artists because it really is amazing to have something in your brain and then execute it and have it become something, and just to watch the process makes it even more, I think, special.
Yeah, I mean, even for me, I love watching different artists' processes because I feel like we all have like a slightly different way of doing things. And like somebody might have a way where it's like, oh, that takes away like 5 steps.
Right.
Like I can do it in half that time. Amazing. So yeah, I'm totally with
Right.
you on that.
No, this whole time I was like, huh, I should definitely do that. Because a lot of times for me, I will change my coloring at the end, um, because I finally have it all plopped together. And so it probably would be helpful for me to kind of just test it out and see before I actually really start to fully go 100% on it. So I will definitely be taking that tip for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, so that is generally what I do when it comes to creating these kind of illustrations. You've got your brainstorm and then your sketching and then your final execution, the color block. I think that helped me because when I first started, I would probably spend like 2 days and 20 iterations of like I'll have 20 thumbnails and show like my husband or some of my other artist friends, and I'll be like, which one? And they're like, that's like 20 choices, Belinda. Like, can you narrow it down a little bit? So like, I don't even know anymore. So yeah, the color blocking is so helpful to reduce some of that
No.
indecision that happens at the end. Um,
Yes,
yeah, for sure.
absolutely. I
Oh,
feel like mhm.
oh, sorry. No, continue. I have one
Oh
more
no,
thing about creating
I
colors.
was gonna say, yeah, that's so true. It's so hard for people who haven't drawn it because they're like, that yellow looks the same as the 50
Yes.
other yellows that you showed me.
Yeah, like my husband's not an artist, and that's actually why I sometimes like to get his opinion because he can
Right,
see like the obvious differences, and he'll be like, "It's the same orange. Like,
right,
what's different about this?" And then I'm like, "Okay, I don't think this decision matters, so
right,
just pick one and go
exactly.
with it."
Right. At this point, let me just pick
Yeah.
one. Oh, what were you about to say, Belinda?
So my other thing about when you set up your file for
Hmm.
yourself, like one thing I'll do is, as you can see, all of these are like individually isolated. And
Hmm.
that is really helpful for art licensing because you can repurpose them for other things. Like for a greeting card, for instance, you've got your front, but then there's also sometimes an inside message. And what I'll often do is I'll take like this peppermint and like that cookie at the bottom, and I might like bring those elements into the inside messaging
Hmm.
to create like that framework. So it's really helpful if you can always make sure when you're setting up your files to keep those layers separate from your background so you're not stuck trying to clip it out later. Like this one, for instance, the inside looks like this. So like I
Mm.
just brought in the candy cane from the front inside and those sprinkles. So there was no redrawing necessary to create that inside message other than like lettering that message for the inside. So like that's a helpful thing to do as well.
Gotcha. And while we're wrapping up, definitely tell everybody, number one, what's something new you're working on, and also where to find you. Clearly, you are in so many different places, not only online, but in stores. So, kind of give us a list of like what you're working on now, where to find you, all the goodies about you.
Sure. So you can best find me online. I am Belinda Kou everywhere. So Instagram, TikTok, Behance, it's the same username. You can find me on those main platforms. I think I have a Pinterest as well that you could follow if you want to see like some of the places that I like to pull inspiration from. And I also have a newsletter, which is where you'll be the first to know anything is my newsletter. That's what I'll usually do. Like I've been off social media for a little bit recently just to kind of focus on our transition, but I've been sending emails occasionally as well. So that's the first place where we get news. And I am currently working on a course for combining illustrations with lettering, kind of like the sneak peek that you got here. So if you're interested in that, definitely make sure you sign up for my newsletter. And that is on my website, which is belindasco.com.
Great. And then also, where can we find your work? I know online at belindasco.com, but are there any stores that currently have your cards?
Yeah, well, Trader Joe's is the most recent one that I can think of. I have a list somewhere else, but I have like not it's not in my brain right now. But yeah, you can definitely, if you're like me, where you go on snack hunts at Trader Joe's, you can look for cards there. I have a
Yeah.
couple running in there.
Oh, nice. Yeah, just go for a snack and pick one up while you're going for your weekly snack or daily snack. And then also because it's the holiday time, I definitely want to kind of hear what you're excited for the holidays, since we're clearly in the spirit of holiday, Christmas.
Yeah. Well, for me, we have moved because we wanted to be closer to my parents so that our kids can grow up near their grandparents. So we're really excited for being able to celebrate the holidays with them together. I'm actually in their house right now. Like that's where we're staying while we build our house. So the other thing I'm excited about
Nice.
is to finish building our house. so so that we can like officially move out of this sort of like in between limbo stage, kind of get settled. And I will finally have like an office space as well. Um, which it goes to say, like, you can run your business out of your living room or your bedroom, which is where I've been running mine. Currently,
Yes.
this is my brother's room, so his childhood bedroom. So you could run your business anywhere if
Wow.
it's online. But yeah, it'll be really nice to have an office space.
Oh, cool. I definitely agree with you on that. Before my husband and I moved to Georgia, we lived in DC and we had like a two-bedroom apartment. And so I can definitely tell you, you can run your business from anywhere.
Yes. Yeah,
Oh
don't
my
let
God.
your lack of a space or like Pinterest worthy studio hold you back from doing what you want to do. We're creative, we can work around it.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Belinda, for joining us. If you are just kind of filtering in, Belinda, lettering artist, she created such a wonderful greeting card, holiday greeting card. Definitely catch her on all the platforms she just mentioned. Thank you so much. I enjoyed watching your process, and I will definitely go to Trader Joe's and pick up some cards.
Sounds great. Thank you, Justine. Thank
You're
you, everyone.
welcome. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Happy holidays, and I hope
Happy
you have a
holidays.
great, yeah, happy holidays. Go to Trader Joe's, pick up a card, give it to somebody for the holiday time, for the season. And yeah, happy holidays, y'all.
We are talking to Phil Palin, and he is giving us the 10 steps to building your personal brand with Adobe Express. My name is Teresa Au, and I work here at Adobe. I'm also the host of Adobe's podcast called In the Making.
What are you working with to start?
Right.
Very important when you're building a brand. Take inventory of what do I already have? In this case, it was podcast artwork designed by Adobe. Okay, so we're clear on our challenge, what we're going to accomplish with our brand. How do we sum up what we do in a sentence? This is a great template for you to work from. So I'm a title who helps audience, verb, and value. Step number 1, challenge, right? Identify the challenge. Step number 2, write a brand sentence. Step number 3 is create a mood board. This was the mood board that we put together.
I wanted something classic, timeless, sophisticated.
We're really officially moving into the brand building phase. That first phase was brand positioning. Now we're going to talk specifically about the build. So we got to sketching when we identified that Teresa loved handwritten style. We actually first asked you to sign your initials and your name. From there, my wonderful designer, Kostya, started to sketch. And you're gonna see how this translated into our logo choice for Teresa, okay? We would call this the mark, the logo mark. We also have what we would call a lockup, what I would call like a seal. So this is a horizontal. So this would be great in a website header. You need to really create a logo system for yourself. The truth is, we typically have at least 4 versions, and Adobe Express is the best place to start to make some of these creative decisions. You're looking at the 5-color palette that we decided on: a white, a light, an accent, a dark, and a black. What we could do is actually hop over to your stuff. If you're seeing here on the left, then click brands. I'm gonna create a new brand for you. Then upload your PNG files. There we go. We can also paste in your hex codes. Let's talk about fonts. Chances are you're gonna find your font in this amazing library. Graphics could be photos. Now, not only do you have everything you need for your brand, but you can also share this. So let's talk about brand photography. What happens, Teresa, if we accidentally photograph a bench in this absolutely incredible photo of you? Well, now, now we can use Gen Fill. I'm gonna highlight this bench. So we're gonna put here, remove bench. Check it out. Look at that bench that is no longer there. What would I do with a photo like this? People might look at this and go, well, how would you use that? Let me show you. In Express, I can remove the background in literally a few seconds. Can you imagine that now on your website?
Yeah.
Right, so the visual just gives that kind of humanizing agent or element. We love to see your environment. We love to see props. I think props arguably are some of the most important things to bring to a photo shoot to make it a success. So yeah, this is Teresa's actual website. So we see you, we see these great little, look, there it is. There it is.
Yeah.
If our brand photos are our leading actors, our supporting actors are stock photos. Here under media, here under photos, we could type anything. Why don't we do podcast? Podcast, let's see what comes up. That looks and feels like it could have been photographed at Adobe. So I went to media, I selected this text to image. That's what we're working on here. All we have to do is just enter a prompt here for what it is that we are gonna work on. So what about this? Creative podcasting workspace. I like the idea of a graphic. We've got a real photo there. So let's see how this will look coming back as a graphic. There we go. I love that. Graphic just adds a totally different style. This would be great as a blog thumbnail. This is so exciting. You can literally create your own image using generative AI, text to image. Thank you to Adobe Firefly.
Well, thank you so much, Phil.
Learn lots. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. See you soon.
We are talking to Phil Palin, and he is giving us